The souvenirs from her vacation with Hayes Relland sat on our kitchen counter like evidence at a crime scene. A lobster-shaped magnet from Bar Harbor, a snow globe with a lighthouse inside, a receipt for dinner at the Cliffside Inn, the kind of place where entrees cost more than I make in a day teaching high school English. Mira unpacked each item with the careful precision of someone who had rehearsed this moment. Her movements were deliberate, calculated. She arranged the souvenirs on the counter as if they were proof of innocence rather than guilt. The conference ran longer than expected, she said without looking at me. Hayes thought it would be good for the team to extend the stay. You know how these corporate retreats work. I knew exactly how they worked. I also knew our anniversary was 3 days ago, and she had been in Maine with her boss instead of home with me. The conference excuse might have held water if I hadn't seen the photos on her phone. Sunset dinners, couples walking on the beach, champagne toasts that looked nothing like business meetings. I had no other choice. You would understand if you trusted me enough, she said, finally meeting my eyes. Her voice carried that practiced calm she used in HR meetings when she was about to terminate someone. I didn't reply. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire that was already consuming everything we had built together. Trust. The word felt foreign coming from her mouth, especially while she stood there unpacking memories of a romantic getaway she had taken with another man. I walked past her toward the bedroom, my footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind me, I could hear her setting down the snow globe with a soft clink against the granite countertop. The bedroom closet was organized exactly the way Mira liked it. Her clothes on the left, mine on the right, everything color-coordinated and pressed. I pulled her suitcase from the top shelf, the same one she had taken to Maine, and placed it open on the bed. My first move was final. I started with her dresses, the expensive ones she wore to company events and client dinners. Each piece of fabric felt like a lie I was folding away. The black cocktail dress she claimed to wear to networking events, the silk blouse that was supposedly for presentations, the lingerie I had never seen her wear at home. She appeared in the doorway as I was packing her shoes. Her face had shifted from calm to concerned, the mask slipping just enough to show the panic underneath. "Corbin, what are you doing?" I kept packing. Each item went into the suitcase like a sentence being closed. Her jewelry box, her perfumes, the book she never read but kept on the nightstand for show. Everything that belonged to her, and nothing that belonged to us. She tried to regain control, stepping into the room with the authority she used at the biotech company where she managed human resources. "We need to talk about this like adults. You're overreacting." I moved to the dresser and began emptying her drawers. Sweaters, jeans, workout clothes she never wore. The mundane items felt heavier than the expensive ones, weighted with the ordinary deceptions of our daily life. "Hayes and I have a professional relationship," she continued, her voice rising slightly. "The company sent us to evaluate potential expansion sites. It was work, Corbin. Just work." I found the receipt again, the one from the Cliffside Inn, dinner for two, wine pairings, dessert to share. The timestamp showed 9:47 p.m. on our anniversary. While I had been grading papers and wondering why she wasn't answering her phone, she had been sharing chocolate mousse with Hayes Relland. She changed tactics when I didn't respond. The tears came next, practiced and perfectly timed. "I'm sorry about the anniversary. I know how it looks, but you have to believe me. Nothing happened. Hayes is married. I would never—" I stopped packing and looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I had married 15 years ago, who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and fall asleep reading my favorite books. When had she become this stranger who could lie so effortlessly? "Please don't do this," she whispered. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll transfer departments. I'll do whatever you want." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope. The papers inside represented 3 weeks of careful planning, consultations with lawyers, and decisions made in the quiet hours when she thought I was sleeping. The divorce petition was already filed. The process had begun the moment I saw those photos on her phone. She stared at the envelope like it might explode. "You can't be serious." I handed it to her and watched her realize this wasn't a threat or a negotiation. This was a conclusion. The finish was clean, surgical, and irreversible. Her vacation with Hayes had ended at our front door. She opened the envelope with shaking hands, scanning the legal documents that outlined the dissolution of our marriage. Her face went pale as she read the terms: custody arrangements for our children, division of assets, spousal support calculations. "The locks will be changed tomorrow," I said quietly. "Your things need to be out by then. Corbin, please, think about Liam and Josie. Think about what this will do to them. Our children. 14-year-old Liam with his quick wit and basketball obsession. 11-year-old Josie, who still believed her parents were heroes. They were the only reason I had hesitated. the only variable that had made me question whether I was doing the right thing. But then I remembered the lies Mira had told them about her trip, how she had FaceTimed them from her hotel room, spinning stories about boring meetings and early bedtimes while Hayes was probably in the shower behind her. Our children deserved better than a mother who could deceive them so casually. They'll understand eventually, I said, when they are old enough to recognize lies. Mira sank onto the bed beside the half-packed suitcase, the legal papers scattered around her like fallen leaves. This is insane. You're throwing away 15 years over a business trip. I'm not throwing anything away, I replied, closing the suitcase. You already did that. I carried her luggage to the front door and set it beside the souvenirs from Maine. The lighthouse snow globe caught the afternoon light, casting tiny rainbows on the wall. Such a pretty lie, just like everything else she had brought home. The locksmith arrived at 7 a.m, just as Mira was pulling into the driveway. She sat in her car for a long moment, watching him work on our front door, probably hoping this was all an elaborate bluff. When she finally approached the house, her professional composure had returned, but I could see the exhaustion around her eyes. "Good morning, Mrs. Findler," the locksmith said politely. He was an older man named Pete who had been changing locks in our town for 30 years. Nothing surprised him anymore. "There's been a misunderstanding," Mira told him with her best corporate smile. "I live here." Pete glanced at me, then back at her. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I was hired by Mr. Findler. He's on the deed as the primary owner." That was true. We had bought the house with my inheritance from my grandmother, back when Mira was still paying off student loans, and I trusted her with everything I owned. The legal paperwork was clear. I had every right to change those locks. Mira's smile faltered. "Corbin, this is ridiculous. We need to talk." "We talked yesterday," I said. "You explained about trust. I listened. The children need their mother." "The children are at school. They'll be staying with my brother Tom until we figure out the custody arrangement." Tom was a sheriff's deputy, steady and reliable in ways that had always made Mira uncomfortable. She preferred people she could manipulate, and Tom had never been impressed by her corporate charm or her ability to rationalize questionable behavior. Pete finished installing the new deadbolt and handed me the keys. "All set, Mr. Findler. You've got the main key and 2 spares." I paid him and watched Mira's face as the reality settled in. She was locked out of the life she had taken for granted, standing on the porch like a door-to-door salesperson with nothing to sell. "Where am I supposed to stay?" she asked. "That's not my problem anymore." She tried a different approach, the one she used when she wanted something from me. Softer voice, vulnerable posture, the suggestion that we were a team facing external pressures rather than 2 people whose marriage had imploded because of her choices. "Hayes is just my boss, Corbin. You're making this into something it isn't?" "Hayes Relland drives a BMW X7 and lives in the mansion on Elm Street," I said. "He's been married to Sienna for 12 years, and they have twin daughters. He's 43 years old, graduated from Harvard Business School, and has a reputation for taking attractive female employees on business trips that look surprisingly similar to romantic vacations." Mira's mouth opened slightly. She hadn't expected me to know so much about her lover. But I was a teacher, trained to research and analyze. Once I decided to investigate Hayes, it had taken less than a week to learn everything about him. "You've been spying on us?" "I've been paying attention. There's a difference." My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Kids are good. Liam wants to know if he can skip practice. Josie made pancakes." I showed Mira the message. "They're fine. They're safe. They're with family who won't lie to them." "I never lied to them." "You told them you were in meetings until 10 o'clock every night. You said the conference was about quarterly projections. You promised Josie you'd bring her a seashell, but all you brought was a snow globe from a gift shop." Each fact hit her like a physical blow. She hadn't realized how carefully I had been documenting her deceptions, cataloging every small betrayal that had led to this moment. A car pulled into the driveway behind hers, a silver sedan I didn't recognize. The driver was a woman about Mira's age with short blonde hair and expensive sunglasses. She got out and walked toward us with the confident stride of someone accustomed to getting her way. "Mira, what's going on?" This had to be Elise, Mira's best friend and co-worker. I had heard about her for years but never met her in person. She was smaller than I had expected, but she carried herself like someone much larger. "Corbin's having some kind of breakdown," Mira said. "He changed the locks and won't let me in the house." Elise looked me up and down with obvious disdain. "Seriously? Over a business trip? Mira works her butt off for that company." "I'm sure she does," I said, "especially the overtime with Hayes." Elise's expression shifted slightly, and I caught a flicker of something that might have been guilt. She knew. Of course she knew. Best friends always know. You don't understand the pressure she's under, Elise said. The biotech industry is incredibly demanding. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices. Like missing your wedding anniversary to share champagne with your married boss. The silence stretched between us. Pete the locksmith had finished packing his tools and was trying to leave without getting involved in the domestic drama, but his truck was blocked by the 2 cars in the driveway. "Excuse me," he said politely. "Could I just squeeze past?" Elise moved her car, and Pete escaped with the relief of someone who had seen too many marriages end on his watch. His truck disappeared down the street, leaving the 3 of us standing in the driveway like actors who had forgotten their lines. "Where are you staying?" Elise asked Mira. "I don't know. I thought this was temporary insanity." "You can stay with me," Elise offered, "until Corbin comes to his senses." I almost laughed. They still didn't understand that this wasn't a tantrum or a negotiating tactic. This was the end, carefully planned and legally executed. There was no coming to my senses because I had never been more sensible in my life. "The divorce papers are already filed," I told them. "This isn't a separation. It's not a trial period. It's over." Mira's composure finally cracked. "You can't just throw away 15 years. "I'm not throwing them away. I'm acknowledging that they ended the moment you chose Hayes over your family." "I didn't choose Hayes. It was work." "Then why didn't you tell me you were sharing a room?" The question hung in the air like a trap she had walked into. I could see her mind racing, trying to construct an explanation that would make sense. But there was no innocent reason for a married woman to share a hotel room with her boss during a romantic weekend in Maine. "We weren't sharing a room," she said finally. "Room 247 at the Cliffside Inn. Registered to Hayes Rellin and guest. 1 king bed, ocean view, champagne service on Friday night." Elise grabbed Mira's arm. "We should go." But Mira wasn't ready to retreat. She had spent her career in human resources, managing conflicts and finding solutions to impossible problems. She couldn't accept that this problem had no solution. "What do you want?" she asked. "Money? Counseling? A transfer to a different department? Tell me what you want, and I'll make it happen." "I want you to leave." "And then what? You'll raise our children alone? You'll explain to them why their mother isn't allowed in their home?" "I'll tell them the truth, when they're old enough to understand it." "The truth according to you." "The truth according to the evidence." I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I had found. Hayes's arm around her waist at dinner, the 2 of them walking hand in hand on the beach. Mira laughing at something he was whispering in her ear. The images spoke for themselves. She stared at the phone screen, and for the first time since this conversation began, she had nothing to say. The evidence was overwhelming, and she knew it. "Get in the car," Elise said quietly. "We'll figure this out later." Mira followed her friend to the silver sedan, moving like someone in shock. As they drove away, she looked back at the house through the passenger window. I wondered what she was thinking, whether she was planning her next move or finally accepting that the game was over. I went inside and locked the new deadbolt behind me. The house felt different without her things in it, emptier, but somehow cleaner. I had work to do before the children came home, phone calls to make, arrangements to finalize, a new life to begin. The gossip started at school before I even arrived Monday morning. Small towns are like petri dishes for scandal, and the news of Mira's affair had apparently spread through our social circle over the weekend like a particularly virulent strain of bacteria. Principal Myers intercepted me in the parking lot, her face wearing the expression she reserved for budget meetings and parent complaints. "Corbin, we need to talk." I followed her into the building, past clusters of teachers who suddenly found their coffee cups fascinating when I walked by. The whispers were barely concealed, fragments of speculation about my marriage, Mira's behavior, and what this meant for the stability of the English department. "I've been getting calls," Myers said once we were in her office. "Parents are concerned about the situation." "What situation is that?" "Your wife's indiscretion. People are talking." I sat down across from her desk, surrounded by motivational posters about excellence and achievement. People always talk. It's what they do when their own lives get boring. This is different. The Rellin family is prominent in this community. Hayes serves on the school board. His wife chairs the fundraising committee. There it was, the real concern. Not my well-being or my children's emotional health, but the potential disruption to the delicate social ecosystem that kept our small-town institutions functioning. "Are you asking me to resign?" "I'm asking you to consider whether you can maintain professional objectivity while going through a divorce." "I've been maintaining professional objectivity for months while my wife was having an affair. I think I can handle teaching Shakespeare to teenagers." Myers shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps you should take some personal time. Let things settle down. Things are settled. My wife chose to destroy our marriage. I chose to end it cleanly. The only thing left to settle is whether you're going to support a teacher who's done nothing wrong or cave to pressure from people who are embarrassed by the truth." Before she could answer, there was a knock on the door. Tom stuck his head in, still wearing his deputy uniform from the night shift. "Sorry to interrupt. Corbin, we need to talk." Myers looked relieved to have an excuse to end our conversation. "We'll continue this later." I followed Tom outside to his patrol car, where Liam and Josie were waiting in the back seat. They looked tired and confused, the way children do when the adults in their lives stop making sense. "Mom came by the house last night," Liam said. "She was crying." "She wanted us to come home with her," Josie added. "But Uncle Tom said we couldn't." I looked at my brother. "What happened?" "She showed up around midnight, pretty upset. Said you were being unreasonable and the kids belonged with their mother. I explained that you have temporary custody and she needs to work through her lawyer." "How did she take that?" "About as well as you'd expect. She accused me of taking sides and threatened to file a complaint against the department." I rubbed my forehead, feeling the weight of decisions that affected more than just me and Mira. Our children were caught in the middle, confused and hurt by a situation they couldn't fully understand. "Dad, why can't we go home?" Josie asked. "Why can't things go back to normal?" How do you explain to an 11-year-old that normal was never coming back? That the life she remembered was built on lies and compromises that had finally collapsed under their own weight? "Sometimes adults make choices that change everything," I said. "Your mother made a choice that hurt our family. I'm making choices to protect what's left of it." "But she's our mom." "Yes, she is, and she always will be. But she can't live in our house anymore." Tom drove us to the elementary school first, where Josie disappeared into the crowd of children with the resilience that always amazed me. Kids adapt faster than adults, finding ways to compartmentalize trauma that we lose somewhere in adolescence. Liam was harder. At 14, he understood more than his sister, but not enough to process it completely. He knew his mother had done something wrong, but he couldn't reconcile that knowledge with his memories of bedtime stories and birthday parties. "Is it true what people are saying?" he asked as we pulled up to the high school. "About Mom and her boss?" I looked at Tom, who shrugged. The truth was going to come out eventually, and Liam deserved to hear it from me rather than from gossip at school. "Yes," I said. "It's true." He nodded slowly, processing this confirmation of what he had probably already figured out. "Are you okay?" The question caught me off guard. When had my son become mature enough to worry about my emotional well-being? "I'm angry," I said honestly, "and disappointed, but I'm okay." "Good. Because Mom's been calling my phone all morning." I felt my jaw tighten. "What has she been saying?" "That you're not thinking clearly, that she made a mistake, but it doesn't mean anything, that families are supposed to forgive each other." "What did you tell her?" "That I need time to think." Smart kid. Smarter than his father had been for the past few months when I was making excuses for Mira's late nights and weekend work commitments. The school day passed in a blur of curious looks and whispered conversations. My students were surprisingly focused, perhaps sensing that their teacher was dealing with something serious and giving him the space to do his job. Teenagers are more perceptive than adults give them credit for. During lunch, I received a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Hayes." I stared at the message for a long moment, considering my options. Hayes Rellin wanted to meet, probably to negotiate some kind of arrangement that would minimize the damage to his reputation and career. The smart thing would be to ignore him, let the lawyers handle everything, and avoid any confrontation that might complicate the divorce proceedings. But I wasn't feeling particularly smart. I was feeling like a man whose wife had been stolen by an arrogant executive who thought money and positions gave him the right to take whatever he wanted. I typed back, "Parking lot behind Murphy's Bar, 8 p.m. His response came immediately, "Thank you." The rest of the day crawled by with the anticipation of a confrontation I probably shouldn't have agreed to, but some conversations can't be avoided, and some truths need to be spoken face to face. At 8 o'clock, I sat in my truck in the parking lot behind Murphy's Bar, watching Hayes Rellin climb out of his BMW like a man who owned the world. He was exactly what I had expected. Tall, confident, wearing a suit that cost more than I made in a month. The kind of man who had never been told no by anyone who mattered. He approached my truck with the cautious steps of someone entering unfamiliar territory. This wasn't his world of boardrooms and business lunches. This was a working-class bar behind a strip mall, and he looked as out of place as a peacock in a chicken coop. I rolled down my window. "You wanted to talk?" "This doesn't have to get ugly," he said. We're both reasonable men. Are we? Because I'm feeling pretty unreasonable right now. Look, I understand you're upset, but Mira and I, it's complicated. It's not complicated. You're married. She's married. You decided to ignore that inconvenient fact. He glanced around the parking lot, probably worried about who might see him talking to the wronged husband. These things happen in business. People work closely together, spend long hours, develop feelings. It doesn't mean anyone intended to hurt anyone. But you did hurt someone. You hurt my children. You hurt your wife. You hurt people who trusted you to behave like decent human beings. I want to make this right. Then leave town. Quit your job. Disappear from our lives. He laughed, a sound without humor. That's not realistic. I have responsibilities, a company to run. You should have thought about that before you decided to run my wife. His composure slipped slightly, revealing the anger underneath. Mira made her own choices. She's an adult. She's also the mother of my children and the woman I trusted with my life. You took that trust and used it for your own entertainment. It wasn't entertainment. We have genuine feelings for each other. Then why are you here talking to me instead of filing for divorce from your own wife? The question hit its mark. Hayes looked away, and I understood that this conversation wasn't about love or genuine feelings. It was about damage control and reputation management. I'm trying to handle this discreetly, he said finally. Too late for that. Half the town already knows. The other half will know by tomorrow. What do you want? Money? A reference for a new job? I have connections. The offer hung between us like a bribe, which is exactly what it was. Hayes Relin thought he could buy his way out of consequences the same way he had bought his way into my wife's bed. I want you to understand something, I said. This isn't over. Every choice has consequences, and yours are just getting started. I started my truck and drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot with his expensive suit and his cheap solutions. The conversation had solved nothing, but it had clarified everything. Hayes Relin was exactly the kind of man I had expected, entitled, manipulative, and convinced that money could fix any problem he created. But some problems can't be fixed, some damage can't be undone, and some consequences can't be bought off with connections and discreet arrangements. The real reckoning was still coming. The first crack in Hayes Relin's perfect facade appeared on Wednesday morning when his wife Sienna showed up at my classroom during my planning period. She was everything I had expected from the photos in the society pages. Elegant, composed, and wearing clothes that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Mr. Findler, I'm Sienna Relin. I believe we need to discuss our mutual problem. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same one where I counseled struggling students and met with concerned parents. Sienna sat with the practiced grace of someone who had spent years at charity luncheons and board meetings. I know about my husband and your wife, she said without preamble. I've known for weeks. Then why are you here? Because I want to make sure Hayes faces appropriate consequences for his behavior, and I believe you might be interested in helping me achieve that goal. She opened her purse and pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. Financial records, credit card statements, hotel reservations, phone records, everything you might need for your divorce proceedings. I stared at the folder without touching it. Why would you help me? Because Hayes has done this before, 3 times that I know of. Each time, the woman gets fired or transferred, and Hayes continues his career without any real consequences. I'm tired of enabling his behavior. What about your marriage? My marriage ended the first time he cheated. I've been staying for our daughters, but they're old enough now to understand that some situations are beyond repair. She slid the folder across my desk. There's something else you should know. Hayes has been telling people that your wife initiated the relationship, that she pursued him aggressively and he eventually gave in to her advances. The information hit me like a physical blow. Bad enough that Mira had cheated, but now Hayes was painting her as the predator to protect his own reputation. Is that true? Does it matter? They're both married adults who made terrible choices. But Hayes is trying to destroy Mira's career while preserving his own, and that's not acceptable. I opened the folder and scanned the contents. Hotel receipts dating back months. Restaurant charges in cities where the company had no business interests. Phone records showing hundreds of calls and text messages between Hayes and Mira, often late at night and on weekends. This is very thorough. I'm very thorough. It's a useful skill when you're married to a serial cheater. What do you want from me? I want you to use this information strategically. Make sure Hayes faces the same consequences as his previous victims. Make sure the board of directors understands what kind of man they've been protecting. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. Your wife isn't the villain here, Mr. Findler. She's another victim of a man who uses his position to manipulate vulnerable employees. I hope you'll remember that when this is over." After she left, I sat alone with the folder, trying to process what I had learned. Mira wasn't the first. She probably wouldn't be the last. Hayes Relin was a predator who used his authority to exploit women who worked for him, and the company had been protecting him for years. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Kids are asking about this weekend? Movie night at your place?" I typed back, "Yes, but I need to make a stop first." That evening, I drove to the biotech company's headquarters, a gleaming glass building that looked like it belonged in Silicon Valley rather than rural Maine. The parking lot was nearly empty, except for a few cars belonging to the cleaning crew and late-working executives. Hayes's BMW was parked in the spot marked CEO, which told me everything I needed to know about his ego and priorities. I parked next to it and waited. 20 minutes later, Hayes emerged from the building, talking loudly on his phone about quarterly projections and market expansion. He stopped short when he saw me leaning against his car. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, then hung up. "What are you doing here?" "Returning something that belongs to you." I handed him a manila envelope containing copies of all the evidence Sienna had given me. "Your wife thought you might want to review these before tomorrow's board meeting." He opened the envelope and his face went pale as he recognized the documents. "Where did you get these?" "From someone who's tired of cleaning up your messes." "Sienna gave you these?" "Sienna gave me a lot of things, financial records, hotel receipts. A very detailed timeline of your affair with my wife and your previous affairs with other employees." Hayes looked around the parking lot, probably checking for witnesses or security cameras. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand that your actions have consequences beyond your immediate gratification. You've hurt multiple families. You've abused your position of authority. You've created a hostile work environment for women who just want to do their jobs. The board will believe documented evidence, especially when it's presented by your own wife." I could see him calculating, trying to find an angle or an escape route, but there wasn't one. The evidence was overwhelming, and his wife had the social connections to make sure it reached the right people. "I can make this worth your while," he said finally. "Financially. A consulting contract with the company, stock options, whatever you want. I want you to resign. I want you to issue a public apology to the women you've exploited, and I want you to stay away from my family." "That's not realistic. I have a contract, severance clauses, legal protections." "Then I guess we'll see how good those protections are when the local newspaper gets copies of these documents. Small-town papers love stories about corrupt executives and corporate cover-ups." Hayes's composure finally cracked completely. "You're making a mistake. I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, private investigators. I can make your life very difficult." "My life is already difficult. My wife cheated on me with her boss. My children are confused and hurt. My reputation in this town is damaged. You can't threaten me with consequences I'm already living." I walked back to my truck, leaving him standing in the parking lot with the evidence of his own misconduct. As I drove away, I could see him in my rearview mirror, still holding the envelope, finally understanding that his actions had caught up with him. The next morning, I woke up to find 3 missed calls from Mira and a text message. "Hayes says you're trying to destroy his career. This has to stop." I called her back, and she answered on the first ring. "Corbin, please. You're hurting innocent people." "Hayes Relin is not innocent, and neither are you. He has a family, children. You can't ruin his life because you're angry at me." "I'm not ruining his life. I'm revealing what he's already done to ruin it himself." "The board meeting is today. If you go through with this, it will destroy everything." "Good. Some things deserve to be destroyed." She was quiet for a long moment. "What about us? What about our family?" "We don't have a family anymore. We have 2 children who need to understand that actions have consequences and that people who hurt others eventually face justice." "I made a mistake. You made a series of choices over several months. You chose to lie to me, to our children, and to yourself. You chose Hayes over your marriage. Now you have to live with those choices. I choose you. I'm choosing our marriage. Too late. I'm not an option anymore." I hung up and turned off my phone. Whatever happened at the board meeting, whatever consequences Hayes and Mira faced, I was done being part of their drama. I had my own life to rebuild and my own children to protect. The reckoning had begun, and there was no going back. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. I know because Tom called me when it was over, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a cop who had just closed a difficult case. "Hayes resigned," he said, "effective immediately. something about pursuing other opportunities and spending more time with his family. I was grading papers at my kitchen table, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy while my world continued to reshape itself around me. What about Mira? Terminated, along with 2 other employees who were apparently involved in covering up previous incidents. The news should have felt like victory, but mostly it felt like the end of a long, exhausting battle that nobody had really won. Hayes would land somewhere else with his MBA and his connections. Mira would find another job, probably in another town. The only real winners were the future employees who wouldn't have to deal with Hayes' predatory behavior. How are the kids taking it? They don't know yet. They're at school, living their lives, trying to pretend their parents haven't lost their minds. When are you going to tell them? Tonight? When they get home? But Mira beat me to it. I found her sitting on my front steps when I returned from picking up Liam and Josie, looking smaller and more defeated than I had ever seen her. She had been crying, and her professional polish was completely gone. "Mommy!" Josie ran to her, and Mira wrapped her arms around our daughter like she was drowning. Liam hung back, reading the situation with the cautious intelligence of a teenager who had learned not to trust emotional displays from adults. "Can we go inside?" Mira asked. "Please, I need to explain some things." Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door and let her in. She looked around the house like she was seeing it for the first time, noticing how I had rearranged things in her absence, how the space had adapted to her not being there. "I lost my job today," she told the children, "because I made some very poor choices." Josie looked confused. "What kind of choices?" "I hurt your father, I hurt our family, and I hurt other people at work." "Because of Mr. Hayes?" Liam asked. Mira's face crumpled. "Yes, because of Mr. Hayes." I watched this conversation unfold, feeling like an observer rather than a participant. These were her consequences to explain, her choices to own, her relationship with our children to repair or destroy. "Are you and Daddy getting divorced?" Josie asked. "Yes, sweetheart, we are." "Because you don't love each other anymore?" Mira looked at me across the room, and I could see her searching for an answer that would make sense to an 11-year-old. "Because I forgot how to love your father the way he deserved to be loved, and by the time I remembered, it was too late." "Will we still see you?" "Of course. I'm still your mother. I'll always be your mother. But I won't be living here anymore." Liam had been quiet through this exchange, but now he spoke up. "Where will you live?" "I don't know yet, but somewhere close, somewhere you can visit whenever you want." After Mira left, I helped the children with their homework and made dinner, trying to establish routines that would give them stability in a world that had become unpredictable. They were resilient, adapting faster than I had expected, but I could see the stress in small things: Josie's nightmares, Liam's sudden interest in staying busy with activities that kept him away from home. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Sienna Rellin. Hayes had moved to Boston, she said, to take a position with a pharmaceutical company that apparently hadn't done thorough background checks. She was proceeding with her own divorce and wanted to thank me for providing the evidence she needed to ensure a favorable settlement. "He'll probably do this again," she said. "Men like Hayes don't change. They just find new victims." "That's not my problem anymore." "No, it's not. You did what you needed to do for your family. That's all any of us can do." Mira found an apartment across town and a job with a smaller company that specialized in environmental consulting. She seemed genuinely committed to rebuilding her relationship with Liam and Josie, showing up for school events and weekend activities with the dedication of someone trying to earn back trust she had carelessly thrown away. We developed a civil relationship based on co-parenting and mutual respect for our children's emotional well-being. The anger faded slowly, replaced by something that wasn't quite forgiveness, but wasn't active hostility either. We had loved each other once, and that love had produced 2 remarkable children who deserved better than parents who couldn't be in the same room without fighting. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in November, a gray day that seemed appropriate for ending something that had once been full of color and possibility. I signed the papers in my lawyer's office, officially dissolving 15 years of marriage with the stroke of a pen. That evening, I cooked dinner for Liam and Josie. Spaghetti with meat sauce, their favorite comfort food. We ate at the kitchen table where Mira had once unpacked her souvenirs from Maine, where this whole mess had started with lies about trust and business trips. "Are you okay, Dad?" Josie asked, twirling pasta around her fork with the serious concentration she brought to everything important. "I'm okay," I said, and realized I meant it. "We're okay." "What happens now?" Liam asked. "Now we figure out how to be a family in a different way. We take care of each other. We do our homework and go to school and play basketball and have movie nights. We keep living." "Will you get married again?" "I don't know," Maybe someday, if I meet someone who makes me want to try again. Will Mom? I don't know that either. That's her choice to make. After dinner, we watched a movie. Something silly and mindless that made Josie laugh and allowed Liam to forget for a while that his parents had disappointed him. When they went to bed, I sat alone in the quiet house, feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The nightmare was over. The consequences had been faced. The truth had been told, and somehow we had all survived it. Not unchanged, not undamaged, but alive and moving forward. I thought about Hayes starting over in Boston with a new job and the same character flaws that would eventually catch up with him again. I thought about Mira, alone in her apartment, trying to rebuild a life she had destroyed with her choices. I thought about Sienna, free from a marriage that had been poisoning her for years. And I thought about my children, sleeping safely in their beds, learning hard lessons about integrity and consequences that would serve them well when they faced their own difficult choices. The story was over, not with redemption or reconciliation, but with resolution. Some endings aren't happy, but they're necessary. Some marriages can't be saved, but the people in them can be. I locked the doors, turned off the lights, and went upstairs to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new possibilities. Tonight, for the first time in months, I would sleep without wondering what lies I was choosing to believe. The truth had set us all free, even if freedom looked different than any of us had expected.